You weren't born free, you were born into an invisible cage. Before you even learned to speak, your mind was already being shaped. While you were still learning to walk, they were already telling you what was right, what was wrong, what was beautiful, what was ugly. Your name was chosen, your language was inherited, your culture was imposed, and they called it identity. You grew up in a system that turns human beings into parts, silent cogs in a vast machine. From an early age, you were conditioned to sit, be quiet, obey, to get good grades, wear the uniform, accept authority without question, to compete with others for symbolic rewards. Gold stars, report cards, adult approval. They told you that studying hard would get you a good job, that working hard would bring happiness, that buying a house and a car was a sign of success, and that following this script, step by step, would make sense one day. But deep down, you felt something was wrong. Because the happiness they promised never arrived. Because even surrounded by things, you felt empty. Because the rules they gave you always seemed to benefit the same people. Because no matter how hard you tried, you never felt like you were enough. You were taught to consume, not to question. You were trained to repeat, not to think. They taught you the names of dead kings and dates of distant wars, but never taught you who you are. Meanwhile, the screens came to life. They became the new oracles. You learned to measure your worth in numbers, likes, followers, views. You learned to smile while sad, to pose while broken, to edit your pain until it looked like beauty. Television told you how to dress. The internet told you how to think. Social media told you what to love, what to hate, what to desire, and you obeyed, like everyone else, just as the script demands. But something inside you began to crack. A quiet discomfort, as if the world were a theater and you were the only one who noticed, as if everyone else were hypnotized and you were starting to wake up. Waking up means realizing that normal is sick, that working 8, 10, 12 hours a day at something you hate is not a virtue, it's a prison, that living in debt to maintain an image of success is an endless cycle of suffering, that the progress they praise is destroying the planet that sustains you, and that deep down, no one is living, only surviving. You begin to feel out of place. You look around and everything feels automated. People in a rush, staring into nothing, running nowhere, blank faces, empty eyes, mechanical conversations. You start to hear the silence between words, to notice the absence of meaning in routines, but no one seems to notice. They're too busy with deadlines, bills, shows, gossip, likes, and other people's opinions. You try to speak, but no one listens. You try to show them, but they call you crazy. You feel like the only one awake in a world of sleepwalkers, and it hurts. Waking up is realizing that freedom isn't doing whatever you want. It's understanding why you wanted it in the first place. It's seeing that many of your desires were planted in you. That much of what you believe isn't yours. This is when you start questioning everything, and in questioning everything, you begin to be free. But being free isn't comfortable. It's losing your footing. It's walking without a map, without guarantees, without applause. You begin to see the contradictions, the speeches that preach peace while funding wars, the companies that talk about sustainability while choking the planet, the institutions that promise justice but protect the powerful, the religion that teaches love but only within its doctrine. You begin to understand that fear is the language of the system. Fear of being wrong, fear of failure, fear of being different, fear of being yourself. And that fear is what chains you, what paralyzes you. What makes you prefer a comfortable lie over a painful truth, but the truth is still there, waiting, silent, ineffable. And then, amid the chaos, you realize you're not going crazy. You're waking up, And waking up means no longer being a character, but becoming the author. You ask yourself why no one reacts, why no one screams, no one runs, no one breaks the chains. But the truth is, most people don't even know they're imprisoned. They're numb. Numbed by modern addictions, by promises of success, by infinite distractions, because it's easier to stay asleep, more comfortable to pretend everything is fine. And deep down, everyone's afraid of what they'd see if they dared to open their eyes. But you opened them, you saw, and now there's no turning back, because once you see the lie, it can never be real again, and that is terrifying. But it is also the first breath of freedom. Waking up feels like a miracle, but in truth, it is an exile. You walk through the same places, but everything has changed, or rather, you have changed. And now, what once seemed normal feels absurd. Trivial conversations drain you. Small lies bother you. The routines you once followed without thinking now suffocate you. You begin to see how almost everything around you was built to keep you from thinking. News repeating the same fears. Ads promising instant happiness. Entertainment that distracts but never awakens. Information in excess. Wisdom in extinction. You try to talk, try to share what you feel. But the world doesn't want to listen. It calls you a pessimist, a weirdo, a radical. You think too much. It's all in your head. You should stop questioning. And then you realize most people don't want the truth. They want comfort. They want the pretty illusion gift-wrapped and sold in monthly installments. Yes, the truth sets you free. But first it scares you, disorients you, tears you apart. That's why those who awaken isolate themselves. Not because they want to, but because they need to. Because their worldview becomes a language. If you can speak, you become a foreigner in your own home, an exile within your own species. It's at this point that many give up. They return to the comfort zone, pretend they didn't see, settle back into the lie, because thinking hurts. And seeing reality without filters is like staring straight into the sun. It blinds, it burns, it destroys illusions. But if you don't, go back years, if you resist, you'll find that there is a path. Not an easy one, not a fast one, but a true one. A path where few walk, but where each step is your own. No script, no map, no audience. You begin to rebuild yourself, piece by piece. You let go of inherited truths. You question everything that was once sacred. You rewrite your beliefs, redefine your values, and you realize that the greatest freedom is not outside, but within. You begin to embrace silence, to observe more, to speak less. And in that silence, something new is born. Discernment. You no longer react automatically. You choose. You act with awareness, and then you understand freedom is not a conquest. It's a memory, a state of being that was always yours, but was buried beneath layers of fear, guilt, and conditioning. But this new perspective comes at a cost. You begin to lose. You lose friends. You lose relationships. You lose opportunities that once seemed essential, and it all hurts. Because you're still human, you still feel, you still carry scars. But at the same time, you gain something no one can ever take from you: peace, authenticity, clarity, a kind of power that isn't flaunted, but is deeply felt. The power of no longer being a slave to others' opinions, of not measuring yourself by sick standards, of not selling yourself for crumbs of approval. And then, one day, you find others, few, but real. People who also woke up, and like you, went through the exile, the pain, the rebuilding. And there, without masks, without competition, without rehearsed speeches, you recognize each other, not as masters or gurus, but as fellow travelers, as lighthouses in the fog. You're no longer alone, you never were, but only now can you see it. You finally understand that awakening is not a destination. It is a process. There is no finish line. There is only consciousness. ever deeper, ever wider, ever freer. And the deeper you go, the more you realize that awakening is not about rising above others. It's about descending to the roots. It's seeing the collective pain, the collective ignorance, the collective fear, and not judging it, but understanding it. There's no merit in knowing something if you use it to feel superior. True wisdom is silent. It is humble. It is service. You begin to act with more intention. You start planting seeds. A conversation here, a sincere look there, a brave gesture where once there was fear. You don't try to convince anyone, because, you know, everyone has their time, their own cycle of rupture, doubt, collapse, and rebirth, but you are there, present, whole, real, and that alone is a light, a reminder that it is possible to live awakened, even in a sleeping world. Being lucid is carrying an invisible fire in your chest, a glow in your eyes that unsettles, a presence that disturbs. You walk into a room, and it changes. Not because you speak, but because you are. And that alone is enough to cause discomfort. In those still trapped in illusion, they look at you strangely, accuse you of being too different, say you've made life more complicated, when in truth life was always complex. You just stopped pretending it was simple. You hear, "You're going crazy. You're exaggerating. Why think so much?" And you smile, not because it doesn't hurt, but because now you understand. To the ones asleep, the awakened is a disturbance, a threat, a mirror reflecting everything they've repressed. Being lucid is walking a razor's edge between reason and despair. It's seeing the whole, and sometimes wishing you couldn't. It's realizing that society is built on collective delusions, delusions of control, of status, of power, of immortality disguised as productivity. And while everyone celebrates goals, deadlines, and likes, you ask yourself, at what cost? Who did I have to abandon to fit into this mold? How many versions of myself died just to be accepted? You begin to live differently, slower, deeper, more present, not because you've become a guru, but because you can no longer collaborate with the noise. You prefer silence, contemplation, the company of a tree over an empty conversation, but it comes at a price. Lucidity is lonely. It's walking among ruins while smiling at the sky. It's dancing in the fire with your eyes open. It's knowing you are right and still being judged by everyone. You realize that being normal means being alienated, that healthy, in society's terms, means being numb. That's why lucidity is mistaken for madness. Because it disturbs, it lifts the rug, it reopens wounds, it disarms lies that sustained entire lives. And then you make a choice, the hardest one of all. You decide to remain lucid, even if it hurts, even if it tires you, even if they call you insane. Because you now see that the only real insanity is living a life that isn't yours. It's pretending to believe. It's dimming your light to fit in. It's selling your soul for scraps of approval. Now, you choose. Truth, even naked, even raw, even lonely. And in the middle of this crossing, something shifts. Pain becomes strength. Silence becomes peace. Emptiness becomes sacred space. You stop running, stop chasing, stop trying to prove anything, and then a new kind of sanity arises, one not measured by degrees, achievements, or popularity, but by integrity, by presence, by coherence between what you think, feel, and do. You live less in quantity, but live more in depth. And in that depth, you find the sacred, not the sacred of religions, but the sacred of life itself, the breath, the moment, the now. You reconnect with the earth, with time, with mystery, and you realize maybe you are crazy, but it's a lucid madness, authentic, rare, unbreakable, the madness of being awake in a world that worships sleep, of seeing poetry where others see routine, of seeing beauty where they only see haste. And in this madness, paradoxical, quiet, serene, You find something you never imagined. True sanity. And when lucidity becomes part of you, you begin to see the world with new eyes. Everything that once felt distant now pulses close. Each human being is a mirror, a chance for compassion. Each conflict, an invitation to awareness. Each moment, a window to the eternal. You no longer try to save anyone. You offer your presence. You no longer need to prove anything. You emanate truth. You no longer crave applause. You live aligned with something greater, even if it has no name. Lucidity becomes your temple. And wherever you go, you carry that temple with you. Even on chaotic streets, in crowded trains, in shallow conversations, there is silence within, there is peace, there is a clarity no one can take away. You realize that being awake is not about being above, it's about being whole, radically human, profoundly sensitive, and precisely because of that, unbreakable. This is the madness that heals, the lucidity that illuminates, the insanity that reveals. You don't need to fit in. You only need to be. Maybe the world really has gone mad, but maybe you just woke up, and waking up, and in this time, in this era, on this planet, is an act of rebellion, a conscious choice not to play along with the farce, not to repeat the script, not to smile while everything burns inside. It's painful, it's lonely, but it's real. And reality, no matter how raw, is the fertile ground of freedom, of authenticity, of a peace that depends on nothing, because it grows from within. So yes, maybe you are different now, less available, more selective, quieter, but also more whole, deeper, more present. You no longer want to belong to a world that lives asleep. You want to help build one where living awake is possible. And even if that means walking alone for a while, you walk, because once your eyes open, there's no going back to sleep. You've seen, you've felt, you know. And even if the world keeps spinning in the chaos of haste, image, and illusion, you choose silence, truth, presence. Is the world insane? Maybe, but you are awake. And that changes everything.